Hey, welcome everybody to a special presentation of the Police Applicant Podcast. We have a really good show for you right now. Our special guest is Commander Eric Tung in Police Department. We're going to be talking about police testing and hiring guide that he's putting out. And welcome to the presentation there, Eric.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me back, man. It's good to be back.
Yeah, and you've been a friend of the show for a long time. We've had you on promoting Kent PD recruitment,
Yep.
and you've moved on to other things, promoted to commander, and you've got some good stuff going on. But for a long time, I guess part of it is that you helped candidates, obviously, in the recruitment unit and the hiring, and now that you've peeled off to another place in the department, you're still helping candidates. So what we're going to do is today we're going to be talking. There's my brand new logo, Eric.
I like it. Yeah, I was noticing that. Sure.
That's for 2025. So I'm going to mix it up a little bit. But here we have Blue Grit Wellness has a police testing and hiring guide that's run by you. And we are going to be talking about this offering that's going to be on bluegritwellness.com. And Eric's tagline is "Stay Gritty," and you can follow him on Instagram. And just before I forget, how can they find you on Instagram?
Yeah, it's Blue Grit Wellness, so the same tag, Blue Grit Wellness.
Okay, Blue Grit Wellness. So tell me, how did the phrase Blue Grit Wellness come about?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, really where this all started was 2020. And it was just recognizing that law enforcement was in a spiral. We were all, super rattled. People were leaving in droves. And for those of us that weren't leaving, like I'm amongst most of us that have been honest, we're like, should we leave? Like, what are we doing here? But really it was through that hurt, through that frustration and seeing what our country was doing. Just going on my own personal social media and just sharing out some thoughts and some reflections, which was that, hey, you know what, like, feel however you want to feel. Most of us cops are here because we care about people, we care about humans, we care about our families and our communities, and that's what we're doing. We're trying our best. Like, tell me if you got some sweet ideas, but this is the majority of us. And I had so many people in my personal life reach out and say, hey man, like, I really haven't known you since high school or known what you're up to, but you're the kind of guy that needs to be a cop. Like, I'm so glad that there are people like you. At least there's people like you. And I'm like, in some ways I was so frustrated because I was like, yes, there's a lot of people, like the majority of people are people like me that care like I do. They're just not saying something, publicly. But that helped me realize that I wanted to do a couple things. I was at a point in my career, I was a patrol sergeant, and I felt comfortable enough with my trajectory. I wasn't going to go undercover or anything like that. I wasn't adverse to being, speaking publicly on behalf of the department and just doing community meetings and things like that. So I just really felt like it was a good opportunity to share some positive message, try to connect with community. At the same time, I'd already been really a huge enthusiast for fitness, for policing, but just life in general. Found that in job, and then huge advocate for peer support and mental wellness awareness. So that became Blue Grit Wellness, just trying to provide helpful information to help our first responder community just be the best they can, like be the most healthy and balanced, because it all feeds back into the job, helps us be the best cops we can be. It also helps us be the best dads, moms, kids, parents, and all that.
So you've been working at Blue Grit Wellness for a while, and there was a lot of things that you had going on with it, where it was really a one-stop shop for helping cops and helping people that wanted to be cops. And so now we have a new place that you're going with this, and it's Blue Grit Wellness Police Testing and Hiring Guide. So tell us about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I did come out of hiring. Sergeant was my role. So recruiting and hiring, that was in 2021. So like just about every agency around the country, our hiring was suffering. And so we did a whole revamp my department. They moved me out of a small unit to take over our recruiting. And that was with Brian. He came on the show with me, thanks to you. But that was really like my first, hey, let's go on a podcast, because the attitude was try everything and just get out in front of people and just try to help these good people that want to be cops be the best cops they can be. And so for me early on, I was like, recruiting and community engagement, they're the same thing. And then ultimately, since I already had Blue Grit Wellness working, because I consumed like, my 50, 60 hours a week or probably 70 hours a week of my brain, trying to figure out how we could be the best recruiters and just help our police industry beyond my department, but just as a whole. I was posting frequently on Blue Grit Wellness because that was just what I was thinking about and talking about all the time. So it became a resource for new applicants as well as, what it already was just trying to provide helpful information for first responders and cops. So since then, through the podcast, Blue Grit Radio, there's always this desire to mentor back and this desire to give the information that I wish I had being a 21-year-old failing his first oral board in his hometown and just not knowing what I didn't know, right? And so now we're in an age where thanks to resources like you, so many people have this wealth of knowledge and this information they can access if they care to take the time. So Blue Grit Wellness became that as well. I've been out of recruiting for a year and a half, I suppose. It's gone pretty quick, but it's continued to be a point where people reach out, they want advice, they want help, and I'm always there for it, like free advice. Most of my episodes have some nods of themes that I remind people as new cops or police applicants, like things they should think about with mental health or fitness or training, legal knowledge, all those things. But this was really the culmination where I was like, I can have the one-on-one calls, I can talk about it on the podcast, or I could just put everything I know, like literally collect everything I know as concisely and comprehensively as I can and put it into a guide. So rather than hiring me or somebody else to talk about oral board interviews for multiple hours at a time, taking a lot of time and money and resource, just get a guide and you can work through this. It breaks down each step of the hiring process, but also what I believe is more important is it prompts to your mindset, things that you should be thinking about when you're coming into law enforcement, ways that you should look at your life and taking ownership. So you show up as a strong person and then a candidate, and then hiring folks like Ken back in the day or me back in the day, or like I see it, like I see this guy or gal and they have what it takes to be a cop, rather than this flip of like, well, I just need to be given the chance. It's like, no, show up right now, but take the time and do some of these exercises and prompts and figure out how to show up in your best way. Through the page, follow up to the podcast episodes, I'd be talking about a topic and then flipping it to, hey, these are the things you should be thinking about as an applicant or a new cop, and recognizing that there's still this mystique to the hiring process. And you can find this through different agency resources sometimes, but I still also hear this feedback from people saying they reached out to X agency or Y agency in their hometown, in their region, and they have no idea what to expect. And so this is just removing all the guesswork so you know what to expect, rather than having to throw your name in the arena and then just trial and error like I did and like so many of us did. Just recognizing like what to expect so you can adequately prepare, and then also adopt some of those things into your day-to-day, week to week, right? As far as mindset, regimen, routines, things that are going to help you mentally, physically, everything above, really.
And so this guide is very generalized. So anybody across the United States, probably in Canada, can profit from it. So tell us, is it an ebook? Is it something that they get off the website, or do they call you? How do they access this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like an ebook. It's a set of PDFs, basically, roughly 30 pages, where you go on the website, you buy it, and then you have a window to download it, like 30 days. And, if you didn't, I'll just send it to you. But really it's to work through at your own pace, right? There's little excerpts you read about how to develop your mindset, things you should be thinking about, but also how you internalize and process and reflect on your experiences, right? Because background investigator or detective, like Ken, he's looking at all of your life on paper, but it's really important how not just you present that, but how you reflect on and how you learn from that. I mean, that's such a key thing that we talk about in the hiring game, which is a lot of people have made mistakes. Most of us have made many, but what do we learn from that, right? And if just putting stuff out on paper and not being able to actually process and utilize it in a way to learn from it and show that actually through virtue of how you live your life, then it's kind of all for naught. So it is a combination of lessons learned, prompts, exercises that is a lot more specific for interview and how you process, like, why do you want to do this job and why here, and what challenges, what aspects, experiences have you had that would parlay into a positive, constructive law enforcement career. It walks through all of that, and then more as we go on to all the different criteria, even breaks down, the physical fitness thing, how that might range between different regions, different states and agencies, and how you can find that all out.
So it's really a robust ebook on the entire process, not just like I focus on backgrounds.
Yeah.
But and then I have somebody that focuses on oral interview prep, and then other people have their niche as far as being subject matter experts and things. But you being in hiring at Kent, you knew the entire process from start to finish. So your services offer from A to Z everything a candidate will need to know to prep.
Yeah, absolutely. And we even did away with first round oral boards a while ago, stylistic thing, but it's always relevant, like how you show up and how you meet people and how you interview. And there's even examples like, some people don't realize that the first time you reach out via email or via phone call, or you meet someone in person at a recruiting office or an event, like, you are interviewing, you are showing up, you're being evaluated. And that's not to like freak you out, just to realize that take this seriously, take this job, it's a lifestyle, it's a calling for many people. But if you think about wanting to be a certain type of cop, and the type of cop that you want showing up to your family on the worst day, God forbid, you should live your life a little bit differently, right? So it's not just showing up with a rep, but it's like, how respectful are you in general? Like, do you let road rage stuff get to you, or do you let it go? Are you polite in just general public situations? Like, do you take your health and fitness seriously? So that's what I mean by getting into like the weeds with mindset, but it's all related, right? So if you take this stuff seriously, you're going to show up as a better candidate, but you'll also show up as a better future cop. You'll be a better cop when you do get the job, and much more likely that you do when you do it that way. So yeah, it is trying to just give all this breadth of information so you can work through it, because preparation is the key to success in anything, truly. So just realizing that was where we had a lot of success in our hiring process, was just giving people time. Like, a lot of people would reach out to different agencies and just not really get an email back or a phone call back. But Brian and I made it our personal mission just to take time with people. Even if it was 30, 40 minutes we weren't planning on, we would make it work, because people are showing up in that time that not enough cops were, or not enough prospective cops were. And so we owed them that. Luckily, we had the bandwidth to do it. But at the same time, I realized that just by starting the mentorship there, that's what made successful candidates. That's what made successful applicants. And then that's what makes successful recruits when they're in academy, and successful cops when they are out of academy, because you've instilled that mindset. You've helped them polish their own positive virtues, and then they believe in that relationship and that mentorship. So that is really it's always a passion that it continues to exist with Blue Grit, even as I talk about training and ops and leadership and command staff stuff. Like, ultimately, it is still all going back to the beginning, because I'm trying to speak to the new person coming in. When I talk about when you start running a small unit, that's because you will one day. I'll be gone, right? But you're going to be chiefs and sheriffs and all that. And Ken's going to be actually not fake retired like you are now. You're going to be like real retired, just chilling, right? I don't wish that upon you. I don't think you will. You're not the type, or you'd be doing it already. But you know what I mean? Like, it's really about like just building people up so they can be their best.
Yeah, and I find that when I talk to people, I've had people come back to me and go, man, I sat in front of my background investigator and they said, did someone help you? Because this stuff is like spot on. And you can tell, the background investigator can tell that this person was ready to go. They hit the ground running. They didn't come in and kind of flub everything. And so with what you're offering them that ability to remain calm and to feel confident in the entire process by contacting you and getting this ebook, and then contacting you for more help. So then that way, when they start the process, they go, this is familiar. Eric told me about this. I know about it. I feel okay with this. And I think that's the best medicine for people who have anxiety about the
Mhm.
process.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I failed my first oral board and it was in my hometown and I felt like I did everything right. Like I knew how to interview. I knew how to show up and dress sharp. I had good questions that I was going to ask if I was given the opportunity. I'd actually met the hiring sergeant at a career fair back. So I already had a first, like, not first name. I had a last name basis. I had shaken his hand. I had met him, so I was familiar, right? I sent an email prior, being like, "Hey, I'm really excited for the interview. I appreciate the opportunity." Just trying to do all these professional things, but I just absolutely bit it, right? I didn't know what to expect. I was trying to be something I wasn't, right? I buzzed my hair. I went in. I had no military experience, just out of college, so I was like, "Hey, I think that this is what they want, right?" The guy I met has this buzz cut, like, why not me? And I showed up really inauthentically, right? I was a good candidate. I just hadn't realized how to show up yet. It wasn't until the next one where I got 16th and they never got to me. And the next time I got 9th and then they slowly chipped away and got to me. I did an interview where finally I was starting to recognize what was working, what was not. And it was actually an interview I didn't care a whole lot about. It was this tiny agency north of Seattle and I didn't want to work for them, but it was college. It was summer after college. I didn't have a job. I had graduated and I was like, you got to do this seriously, right? So I show up and I'm myself. Like I'm making fun of myself a little bit. I'm cracking a smile. I'm sitting back, confident, right? You said it, right? So like competence breeds confidence, and I'd done it enough times that I was like, you know what? I can talk about my mistakes, I can talk about my successes, and I know which ones I want to focus on. So I kind of had the playbook and the notes, like literal and mental, that I'd been working on. Not a lot of people do that, right? So they go in, they throw themselves at the process kind of haphazardly, and not no blame, just don't know better, and they don't get a call back, or they get the negative call, right? They get the negative email or say, "Hey, you're not moving forward," and they're just like, "Shoot, I guess it wasn't right." And they might try a couple more times, and those listening in probably have the resilience to keep trying, which is fantastic, right? But at the end of the day, if you're not actually recognizing what you need to learn from each experience and how to apply that, then it's for naught. And I know so many people that they're good dudes, good gals, but they're like, I guess it wasn't for me. I don't know that many of them actually did that deep dive and reflective work and actually drafted out some of their responses and practiced them, right? Like we have this day and age where you can set up your phone, you can record yourself and see how awkward you look, you can see how many ums you say. This can all be practiced, and it's not showing up disingenuously, it's actually just perfecting your skill. Because when you get out there, if an interview throws you off or a polygraph has you so rattled that you literally can't follow the instructions, then that's a problem, because there's people out there that are going to try to fight you. There's people that are going to get in your face with a phone and ask you to recite constitutional law and audit you. Like, you need to be able to keep your cool and then build on these skills. And so it all is super intertwined. But yeah, it's just providing that confidence, as you said, so they know what to expect and they can absolutely prepare, not just to throw their name in the hat and waste weeks and weeks and weeks. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
down the line, if you need help with interviews, cool. Like there's people that can work with you. I'm one of them. If you have a sticking point in your background and you don't really know how to detail or articulate something, then yeah, we got a professional for that. It's Ken Roybal, right? Like he's the guy. I'm not the guy, right? I can tell you about the general sense, but you were doing it for so many years, and I kind of dipped my toe in it when I was supervising and trying to do some on the side to get my unit moving, in the ways I could. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, this is pretty cool that you're doing this. So, in order to get in touch with you for this ebook, is to go to bluegritwellness.com,
Yep.
and then on Instagram at bluegrit. I encourage everybody to follow Eric at Blue Grit Wellness on
Thank you.
Instagram, and then from there they can get the ball rolling and just feel a little bit better about when they apply, that they're ready to go and they're not as nervous, because it's a really tough competitive process to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awkward. But if you realize, shoot, this is super uncomfortable, I'm going to tell somebody, I'm going to write down my deepest, darkest secrets. As one of my background investigators, when I was hiring, I remember he said it,
Mm-hmm.
dude, I'm going to know you better than your parents. I'm going to know you better than anybody that's alive. And he's a friend now, right? Like I got hired. But at the same time, I got to a point where I was able to just recognize like some humility, check my ego. I'm like, you know what? I'm not a bad dude. I haven't done heinous things. I've definitely made mistakes. I've definitely broken the law. Sure, like young, dumb stuff. But a lot of cops have. Majority of cops have. And so it's just to come into this culture is ownership and being transparent so you can be trusted, right? So you can, our integrity is paramount. And your word is going to mean more than the average person in court, which is what it all comes down to. It all comes down to court.
Yeah.
Like what happens to the suspect in this crime or mental health court, all kinds of courts, civil court. Your word has to mean something. And that's where, I mean, you talk about so much, right? Like honesty is paramount, but then how you show up, right? And making sure that you're not just testing and failing and testing and waiting for a window. And I guess I'll try again after I get passed through the window, or maybe I'll try these agencies. No, just take the time, take the pause, reflect, figure out what you need to work on and work on it. It's okay. Like we all have that stuff, and polygraph, it's super nerve wracking. I've done several. I've passed them all, but it's still super uncomfortable. It just is. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. I want to thank you for coming on here and letting us know about this. So everybody, bluegritwellness.com, at Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. Eric, thanks for being here and
Thank
for
you.
offering this to the candidates. I think it's an invaluable service that everybody can use. So with that, what are your parting words?
Yeah, it's about the long game. So think about it this way. I mean, so many people that I've met through the years, even before I was in recruiting, they're like, hey, like I have this thing. I just need to get dialed in on my fitness, or I just need to practice the written, and I just don't know how to figure out my life so I can be a cop, but I want to be a cop. Okay, like start today. Like there's something you can do today, even if it's 10 push-ups on your knees, and you weren't going to do it if you didn't tell yourself, hey, I'm doing it. Like start somewhere. You don't have to buy the guide. It's just that's the most comprehensive way I can help people. And I'm super excited that a lot of people have been getting success and just recognizing, man, this is taking away a lot of the stigma. And now I know what to expect. And I wish I had this before I tested, that kind of thing. They're waiting on the next cycle. But yeah, I mean, if you're listening to this podcast and you listen to mine and look at some other free resources, absolutely. But you're doing something. And so I suppose my parting words is like set yourself up well now so that you will be able to handle all the adversity of the job. You'll be able to show up the best way, not just for the job, but for your family, for your community, because it is about the long game. As you see, Mr. Ken sitting here with a smile on his face with a fantastic mustache. You navigated it well, right? If you weren't, you wouldn't be paying back into the industry. You wouldn't be making such a still prevalent part of your life, this law enforcement culture. But that's who I look to, is the retirees that still have a smile on their face and they can talk about even the hard stuff that they see in the news. But like, hey, we got a job to do and we're proud to do it. And we're going to keep doing the best we can.
Now, is there a cost for the ebook?
There is a cost. Yeah, it's $50.
Okay. And so they can download it directly from the website?
Yep. You can buy it on there. You can use your credit card or Apple Pay. I think there's a couple options on there through the website. For active cops, there is a promotional guide too. So for the new cops, pick the one that says police. That's your first test, right? If you buy the wrong one, then I don't know if I can help you. You got to read the instructions and what it says. But there's a promotional guide which talks a lot about leadership and the processes for that, because that is another layer of mystique. If you haven't been there, it's super nerve-wracking, but there's nothing super crazy about it. You just got to study and prep and make sure you're prepping the right things. So
yeah. Well, we appreciate you being here. And with that, you should get a whole ton of followers everywhere. And thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you.
We'll see you guys.